I think, first of all, we just need to remember that a team isn't just a bunch of evangelists. So often we think, okay, it's an evangelization team. That means everyone on the team is a street evangelist. But actually, a fully grown team has evangelists, of course. But they're also going to have people who do scheduling or take care of donations or even maybe like host a Christmas party or something. And so I think if we get away from the idea that I am looking for people who are brave enough on the, or aren't scared of the word evangelization and who are going to go out on that, street with me, if we get away from that idea, I'm just looking for anyone who's really willing to fulfill any kind of role on the team. That's going to be a great lead for you. So you want to find people with many gifts who have a desire to serve the Lord.
Welcome to Stories from the Street. I'm Brian.
And I'm Beth.
And today we have with us Joanne Portzer, who is an urban missionary with Saint Paul Street Evangelization. And so she's going to share with us how to start a team. You know why I'm excited about having Joanne on, Beth?
Why?
It's because, I think the human body is 60% water, right? 65% water. I think Joanne is actually 99% joy and then 1% everything else.
I know.
So I don't know if someone did like a couple of makeup, it's like, I haven't seen this. This is actually a physical manifestation of joy.
I know. That's one of the things. That's why she's such a good evangelist. She is definitely a joyful missionary disciple. And sometimes Brian and I are working hard on something and we got to connect up with Joanne. And as soon as we connect up with Joanne, everything's lighter, everything's more joyful. We all smile more. So it's always great. I'm glad to be able to have her as a guest. And what a great topic, because she is an expert in getting teams started. And she's been a team leader, an urban missionary. She's worked for a number of years there for Saint Paul Street Evangelization. So we can't find someone more more of an expert in this topic.
And if you're asking yourself, what is an urban missionary for Saint Paul Street Evangelization? That wasn't a position that was created. Joanne created that for herself because she felt so called in prayer to be full-time with Saint Paul Street Evangelization. She realized that she couldn't just do it part-time, that she had to do it full-time. And there's other models of people doing ministry and needing to even fundraise their salary in order to be present and do the work that God's calling them to do. And Joanne just contacted Steve and said, listen, I'm being called to do this. Like, will you let me do this? Can I fundraise my salary, be full-time with Saint Paul Street Evangelization? And I'm not sure how Steve responded, but I'm sure he was just like, sure, let's bring you on. Yeah. Let's make this possible. And what do you know? The Urban Missionary Program's created. And we have Joanne herself that's led completely by the Holy Spirit to be in a full-time evangelist and urban missionary. And she started in D.C. She moved around a little bit, but there in the Washington, D.C. area for many years. And what a blessing it was to be able to have her. And to bring her on today of what does it take to start a successful team? She is the most qualified person that we have in our apostolate to talk about that. So I'm so excited to have her on.
And it's so important because, Brian and I, whenever you fill out that get involved form, that comes to Brian and I, and it's like, okay, here's a new person. They want to get involved, want to start a team. And we start going through the process. And sometimes it can be a little bit, it's like, oh my gosh, this is a lot to do. Mm-hmm. But it's not as hard as you think. And knowing just a few things here and there to help you understand that role, help you understand what to do as a team leader. It's really all you need to give you the confidence to go out and proclaim Christ as a team leader in Saint Paul Street Evangelization.
So let's go ahead and bring Joanne on and just have her share her joy and her very story with us so that we can help our evangelists better feel equipped to be on the street. So Joanne, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you both.
Joanne, we've been wanting you to be on this podcast ever since we came on.
It takes a long time.
Joanne, just podcast with us. And you're like, listen, guys, I will, I promise, but maybe later.
Now's the time. Yeah.
Now's the time. Well, you had a cough for the longest time, didn't you? And we just wanted that to...
Yes, I got sick and all these different things happened.
And you got married.
There was a delay. And then I got married. Yeah, I moved a couple of times, I think. So it's been busy, but I have a good excuse, right?
Well, it's, nothing happens.
No, I guess not. Nothing.
Nothing happens by coincidence. This is the time that the Lord wanted to do this podcast.
It is.
Right.
And
I'm excited to be here.
So, Joanne, when it comes to being a team leader with Saint Paul Street Evangelization, I'm the one who did a short introduction with you, but I know you've been with us since 2014. Would you want to share yourself how you even heard about Saint Paul Street Evangelization and talk about your story and what drew you to get so involved?
Yeah, I love that question, actually, because I was working at a school. I had a desire to share the faith with other people, and I wanted a really practical, easy way to do it, and I didn't know what to do. And one day, a coworker asked me if I would go to a bus stop and hand out some pamphlets about an event at a Catholic church. And I said, that's a great idea. I'll go for sure, you know. And then as we got closer to the event, I started getting pretty scared. And the day came and Steve picked me up and we went with another friend to this bus stop and we were going to hand out these pamphlets. And I was really terrified. And I was thinking, I don't know these people. This is crazy. I can't do this. But when we got out, and I let this guy named Steve, not Steve Dawson, another Steve, do all the talking. And I just smiled the whole time. And they went, yeah, for everything Steve said to these people. And they responded amazingly. And they said, oh, I'd love to go, or I've been wanting to go back to church, and this is a great opportunity. And I was just amazed. And when I saw how simple it was, I thought to myself that I would have to find other ways to do this. So I started looking for other opportunities. And I found a few in the Baltimore and Washington area where a group here, a group there would do this. And then I heard about Saint Paul Street Evangelization. And someone said, you got to watch the YouTube video with Steve Dawson on there. So I did. And I was amazed. And my immediate reaction about Steve and Adam were, those are my friends. I'm friends with them.
Of course.
It wasn't, I want to work with them or this. It was just, they're my friends. And it was because like everything they were saying was what was burning in my own heart, that we need to be practical. It doesn't have to be difficult. And, you know, we can do this kind of attitude. So when I saw Steve on there, you know, recommending that we give him a call to start a team, I went ahead and did it. And sure enough, like I was contacted shortly after. We received a response shortly after. It was very simple process, really, that I worked through to start the team. They accompanied me the whole way. And I know that's how we do it now as well. But that's how I got involved. And I've never looked back. It's been very exciting.
Joanne, when you first inquired, was that you asking to be an urban missionary, or that was just you asking to be a team leader?
No, I just asked to be a team leader. I would have joined the team if there had been one in my town, but there wasn't one in my town. So that's why I asked to be a team leader. And then it was after doing the team leading that I realized I just was really thirsty to do this full time, but I had another job. So that created a problem. I just couldn't be everywhere at once, right? It was exhausting me. And so I was talking with my spiritual director. I was praying about it. And finally, we really realized the Lord was calling me into it full time. And that's how that event happened that you talked about at the beginning of the podcast.
Did I nail this incorrectly? What was Steve's response when he said, when you called him and shared with him what you felt God was calling you to do? How did he respond to that?
Well, it was actually Adam.
Okay.
Because he was in charge of like projects. And I actually had applied to be a regional missionary first. And I enjoyed doing that. But it wasn't as full-time as I would like it to be. And so that's when I contacted Adam and said, if you would just hire me, I could take care of all your problems for you. I tried to be very convincing. And he said, okay, that's interesting. And he didn't really respond right away, but I was sending him little emails like that. And then finally, I called him and I told him that, you know, I couldn't live without evangelizing. And so this was a matter of life or death for me. And so he said, well, it seems to me that you really have this vocation. And so he was willing to work with me on it and to work something out so that I could do this full time. So that's what happened, actually.
Wow.
That's pretty close to, exactly what happened.
and your joy and enthusiasm was so apparent. It was not very hard, although you had to do the work. You were able to find people that would partner with you in this mission, and that was how you raised your salary.
Right. A lot of people would love to be doing what we do, or, engaging people on the street. Not everyone has the time. And so when they find someone who is willing and just desiring to go out and share the good news, they're happy to back you up, and to be a part of that team. So it's not just me doing the work. It's all of my supporters with me.
That's wonderful.
That's great. That's wonderful.
And so Joanne, you've been doing this now, as you mentioned, since 2014. So 4 years now.
Right.
And you've learned a lot, I'm sure, in your time out on the street. But when someone's discerning about their own call to be a team leader, I know you felt called to be an urban missionary, but taking a step back and just saying, yes, I just feel called to be out on the street and to lead a team. What qualities would you say makes a great team leader?
I think that's a great question. A great team leader isn't just excited about getting out on the street and evangelizing. I think more than that, the team leader really wants to establish a team that's going to be around for a long time, and a team that's going to be strong enough to survive, even if that team leader has to move away or something happens to the team leader, they can't be involved anymore. So I think a great team leader should be looking for awesome people to join the team, and then work to get full involvement of those members. So when I started my Maryland team, I did I did all of the work at first, really, of ordering supplies and scheduling outings. But then as the team grew, I slowly looked for teammates who had gifts for these jobs, and I asked them to help me. And I think that's really wonderful because people want to help. They want to invest themselves. That's why they're there. And it does take time for this to happen because you don't want to force the wrong job on the wrong person. You really want to look for their gifts. But over time, you're going to be able to find that the Lord is going to send you people who have certain gifts. So I think that's another thing about the team leaders, that they'll be patient enough to let this happen.
I'm sorry. I like the way you said that, the different jobs that it's not the first thing. They don't walk in and say, okay, you're in charge of scheduling outings, you're in charge of communication, you're in charge of supplies, but you're patient and you let those gifts kind of come up. So at the beginning, for almost any team, the team leader might be in charge of doing everything. And as they grow and the people on their teams can step into these different roles and help the team leader, to do other things.
Right. I totally agree. And like you said, it takes perseverance. And sometimes it's really hard because you think, oh, it's been 6 months and I don't have, everyone helping me yet. But I think if you have like more of a long-term vision, say, okay, this might take a few years, but over that time, the Lord will provide.
And do you see that the team members who are doing different things, do they have like more skin in the game per se, like they're more invested in the team so they continue to do other things?
I think so. I think it makes a difference when they're able to give of their time or their particular gift. I think that really helps them get excited about our mission more. And, they show up more and, you're in contact with them more. And because of that, you're able to love on them more and you're able to encourage them more, right? So the more interaction you have for whatever reason is always a positive thing. And sometimes we think the team leader is just a head evangelist on outings, but no, they're relating to all these different people and encouraging them. And I think growing together in their desire to spread the good news.
I mean, just very practically speaking, Joanne, how would you say that you can form a lasting team? I know there are a lot of team leaders out there who began with the desire to have a lasting team, but really found it hard to fulfill it. And maybe just maybe lost confidence and just started evangelizing by themselves, or just maybe with one other person. Right. So what are practical steps that you can really share and grow your team?
I think, first of all, we just need to remember that a team isn't just a bunch of evangelists. So often we think, okay, it's an evangelization team. That means everyone on the team is a street evangelist. But actually, a fully grown team has evangelists, of course. but they're also going to have people who do scheduling or take care of donations or even maybe like host a Christmas party or something. And so I think if we get away from the idea that I am looking for people who are brave enough on the, or aren't scared of the word evangelization and who are going to go out on that, street with me, if we get away from that idea, I'm just looking for anyone who's really willing to fulfill any kind of role on the team. That's going to be a great lead for you. So you want to find people with many gifts who have a desire to serve the Lord. So obviously, when you're small like this and you're beginning, you want to remain really spiritually rooted in prayer, like daily prayer. Daily dependence on the Lord is so crucial because when you spend a lot of time with him, I would say he molds your heart. When you hang out with him, you start to smell like him. I've heard people say.
Yeah, that's a great way.
Yeah. And people are attracted to that, but also he'll suggest things to you that you may not think of yourself. He might suggest, put on your heart to invite a particular person into your team or just even talk to a particular priest, So I would say for these small teams of one or two is really remain rooted in prayer. And then my number 2 suggestion is to sit down and brainstorm about people who are intentional disciples of Jesus. Like maybe it's someone from your parish who goes to daily mass. Maybe it's someone you see at adoration or works at a soup kitchen. Any kind of way that you might discern that, they are really following the Lord intentionally. And then you just sit down with that person and share the fruit of your outings with that person. But you just gotta let them know. Great. Yeah, just let them know what kind of things happen on the street. Make it, flesh it out for that person that this is happening, and like real lives, real people are being affected by your being there. That is simply by your presence there, people's lives are being affected. And ask them if they'd be willing to come out and even just stand there or sit there and pray while you do all the work, And that way, even if you're a team of 1, you're now a team of 2 because you've got someone out there with you praying and you're doing all the talking, but they're going to see, you're going to have the fruit of all that prayer and they're going to see how easy it is. And so it's really hard for them. Too. Yeah.
I was just talking to a team leader and he's like, I can't find anyone that wants to go out. People are interested in evangelization, but no one wants to go out. And I said, those people that are saying, yeah, that's a great thing for somebody else, ask them to be on your team as a part of your prayer partners. And he goes, what do you mean?
Yeah.
But I love the fact that you said even take them out to pray while you do the work and have them. Yeah. And the other important thing was sharing the fruits of the evangelization with them so that they see that it's real. So those are great ways to help encourage people that aren't quite ready, but they have a heart for it, but they just need a little more encouragement.
And there were a couple things. We just podcasted with Randy, who's here in the Detroit area, who said the encouragement can actually come from maybe leading a basic evangelization training and giving them confidence about what it looks like to do it in that sense. But the other thing, Joanne, you've been mentioning a lot of different roles that a team may have. Would you define, if you're the team leader, other things that you can, how you can invite other people to participate as evangelists?
How to invite them?
Maybe not specifically the invitation, but what are the different roles
the different roles
that you would invite them and how they can participate on your team?
Right. I think that's a great point because often we do think, it's just a team of evangelists. So there, of course, just the team leader, right? And that's, what we need to begin. And then there are the evangelists, not with you, the faithful Catholic who wants to share his faith with you. But there's also, often we need someone, as the team grows, to schedule outings and to look for places to do the outings. So someone might be keeping an eye out for festivals or flea markets, or just, keeping an eye out for another place to do it, a great place, because you always want to find the best place in your area. And then I would always, recommend that there is a coordinator. So that is someone who's going to send out the word about when the outings are and making sure that the schedule is filled, and so that there's enough people out on each outing. So we always have to have 2. And that can be the team leader and a prayer person if that needs to be at the start. But as you grow, you might have a lot of people, and you just want to make sure that schedule is taken care of. And so you also might have someone who is simply, contacting the team members to remind them occasionally just that of what's going on, keeping connected with them. So like I said, the team leader can do all these things at first, but as they grow, you want people to rejoice in this work with you. Mm-hmm. And also you want a prayer outreach coordinator. That's someone who is going to ask prayers of maybe religious communities or, different parishes or prayer chains, because you want all the prayer you can get. But then there's the actual prayer warrior. There's also on your team someone who will just be praying while you go out on your outing. So again, you may not have that at first, but as you start looking for people to help you, you can say, hey, I know that you are suffering and you're in the nursing home, but I feel so privileged if you join our team as a prayer warrior, right? So it's really wonderful. And then, of course, and I think it's the truth that team is going to be powered by those prayers. And then, of course, you need a spiritual advisor eventually. That's a priest who will come alongside the team, take it under its wing. And it's just a trusted priest who's willing to be there if you ever have an occasion for a moral question, and also just maybe for direction or to support your local activity. Right. So there's these different things,
There's one other one that you didn't mention.
Oh, yeah.
You forgot to mention the hospitality coordinator, the one that
yeah. Again, it's that Christmas party person, right?
Yes. It's important to get together and fun.
Who have these gifts. Right. I mean, I know this wonderful woman who has this beautiful home, and she loves to invite people to her home and welcome them in. And, she has this great gift for hospitality. And she may not have time to go on an outing. Maybe she has a bunch of kids and so forth, but she has this big farm, and she loves to have people over there, and she loves to provide it as a gift. So someone like that can be part of your team.
Oh, and man. A very important part. At first, when you were describing this person, I thought you were talking about Beth.
I know.
I was like, Joanne, are you alluding to Beth? And then I was like, oh, Beth's not on a farm.
I knew that it must sound exactly like Beth, so I had to clarify. Talk about the farm.
But it is an important role to get together with your team, not just we evangelize and we disperse, but to get together for fun, or occasionally, or even just to wrap up after, and just even if it's just over a cup of coffee after or something.
Absolutely.
And do that.
Right.
Joanne, you just mentioned all these roles that can actually develop, as evangelists, all these coordinator positions that you can actually delegate and help there be more activity, so it's not all on a volunteer team leader to make an outing and all your outings happen. But what encouragement and advice would you give to our smaller teams that are just beginning?
Well, I would say to our small teams to look to the future, but enjoy where you're at. It's really fun to start out as a small team, actually. You have a lot of ease in your scheduling because there's just a couple of you, and you can play around with locations to evangelize without involving a lot of people. It's a great time to experiment with times and places to see where you find it most fruitful. And you can also, try offering different giveaways. Like some locations you might find do better with rosaries, others with miraculous medals or crucifixes on chains and so forth. So to the small teams that are just beginning, I would just say, take the time when you are a small team to go over your training material, try out different icebreakers, take heart because you will grow, but you're at a great place in your journey right now, and to enjoy it, test different waters and then gradually invite others to join you. So this is a great time for learning and kind of experiments, and then seeing how the Lord is going to provide for you as you grow. So I think it's just a great place to be, knowing that there's more to come.
I know, you just got me excited to start a team.
It is exciting to start a team.
Have fun and just evangelize with a couple people, and praise God, making it more big and structured, inviting more people to be part of it is definitely great. And a wonderful thing that all of our team leaders should be open to, as they grow and to help things, more evangelization happen within their city. But starting out is a lot of fun.
It is. And you have this special camaraderie between you and the other initial team members. It's just a lot that you share together, and it's something beautiful, I think, that the Lord forms there between you.
So, Joanne, do I have this number correct? I don't know if this was a typo. You said that you have 550 hours of street evangelization experience.
Oh, of course.
That is amazing. Oh my goodness.
You had asked me for that number, or Beth asked me for that number, and I had never tried to calculate it, but I started thinking, well, I wanted to count the times that were actually with teams, right? So I think it's something like that.
That is amazing. And
never been born. It's always exciting.
I'm sure it is. And now this podcast, Stories from the Street, let's get into your stories. Like, can you just share with us some of your favorite stories of your 550 hours of being out there on the street?
Sure. Well, of course, there's different kinds of stories. Maybe I should let you choose. There's the humorous ones. There's the conversion stories, and then there's, just crazy stories. But maybe I'll give you one. You can't
make me choose. Those all sound great. I would love, actually, I think most of the time when we think of stories from the street, I initially just think of conversion stories, right? Because that's what's really bringing us out there. We want funny stories will happen, but our whole purpose is to help bring people into a relationship with Christ and his church. And so when I initially think of stories, I think of conversion, but what funny stories do you have?
And crazy.
And crazy. I know. I want to hear those too.
The funny thing is that you go out with this purpose, and sometimes you're afraid to go out even, or you don't want to go out because you have a headache that day, or you're tired, or whatever reason our enemy has planted in front of us. And then you go out and you have a blast, and you find yourself laughing at the end at this happened and this happened. And then you find yourself amazed and just kind of dumbfounded that the Lord would use you in such an easy way to bring about the conversion of somebody. Okay. So I've never seen someone go straight from being an atheist to a sacramentalized Catholic in one outing, of course, right? But I have seen a lot of major steps happen. And one was with a wonderful, nice, young Muslim man. And he, at first, actually was not so interested in talking to me. And we were at a bus stop. I had offered him a rosary. He had declined. And then we got into this little bit of a conversation. And what I've discovered is I ask people everything I can about themselves. And I let them talk to me.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think just something very important just happened, because a lot of our teams, when we go out there and we're offering rosaries, if someone says no, a lot of times I could easily just end the conversation. How do you keep a conversation going after someone turns down a rosary?
Well, if they don't want a rosary and
you chase them down, tackle them.
No, I don't. I really respect them. So if they walk by me and they say no, and I just I say, okay, I wish them well, and I ask the Lord to bless them, right? But sometimes they're standing right next to me, because I'm at a bus stop. And they're not going anywhere, and I'm not going anywhere, right? So I've asked them if they want the rosary, and they say no, and I say, oh, okay. And I'll say, well, have you ever seen one before? But very casually. I keep the tone very casual and upbeat, very conversational, so that we're having a conversation. It's very natural. So they want to answer that, oh, no, I've never seen one before. And oh, okay. Well, and I'll say, I know that Muslims have prayer beads. Can you tell me about those? Because I wonder if they're similar at all. And I let them talk about it. And then I'm saying, oh, okay, well, there's a difference. This is our difference. This is what we use them for. And this is the God we are speaking to. And he's a Trinity, So
yeah, I'm very sorry to interrupt. We can get back to the story of the man that you were describing. But I just thought that was really cool. Just casually offered a rosary, said no, and then we just kept talking. So I was just wondering how that happened.
Right. They're sitting next to each other. That's a great location.
That is a great location.
Yes.
So
I recommend that. Just sit next to people. So
So
you're
what
wondering
happened,
about the rest of the
Joanne?
story. Well, it was really beautiful because I was able to ask him how he understood God, really. And he talked to me about God. And I said, well, do you have any relationship with him as your father? And he said, no. And I said, well, do you miss that? And he said, well, what do you mean? So this conversation went from him saying no to me asking him questions, right? And then he started asking me questions that, well, I hear you're Christian. If you're Christian, I don't understand the crucifixion. And then he started having questions for me. It was really amazing because they said, we understand God as a very humble God. And he's not out to just take us in his power, but he's a gentleman and he died for us, And I went kind of for the angle of God's humility, and he was so struck by that. At the end of the conversation, his bus came and he didn't want to leave. He wanted to keep that conversation going. And it was just one of those hundreds of conversations they've had that start out with a no. And at the end, they really want to learn more, and they're taking pamphlets from me, and information. And they have that hungry look in their eyes, and they feel like, that they're finally eating something that is so nourishing for them. And I say that, so that's one story out of many that you see, just that you begin with a negative response, and you just turn into a conversation, and at the end, they're hungering for more. So I've seen a lot of that.
So was that the conversion story? So do we still have funny and crazy?
So yeah, funny. There's a lot of funny.
Before we go on, I wanted to point out when you're telling that story, what really struck me is that you were listening well to what he was saying, in a normal conversation that you were truly invested in, out of love. Yeah. And you were able to ask the pinpoint question that I heard was, do you miss that? Asking about the Father, knowing God as a Father. No, I don't. And instead of just going on with that, it was kind of a probing question, but one that opened up his heart. Do you miss that?
Right.
And that's as an evangelist, as you have more of these conversations and you're led by the Spirit, of course, you start to see these little openings where you can dive in a little bit more personal, but not in a way that you're like imposing on this. It's just a question.
I think when you're vulnerable with them, they'll be vulnerable with you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Oftentimes my question is what if it's true? If they say, I don't believe this, that, I'm like, well, what if it's true? What if God did that? Just something to think.
That's great.
That was really wise to be able to, ask that other question. So we're going to hear funny now?
Right. I got a lot of funny.
Do you really? Yeah, I would love to.
Let's hear a funny one.
Well, there's... one time I had a woman, and she... this nice lady, she walked by, really, and she kind of gave me an evil eye, so to speak, and I said, would you like a free rosary? She's like, no. So I turned around and I said a Hail Mary, and immediately she came right back and said, can I have a rosary? Are you kidding me? This is amazing. Another time, I think I've told this story a lot because I love it so much, but I was at the entrance to a metro station, and a man walked by, and I asked him if he would like a rosary, and he said he declined, and he went into the tunnel leading to the train. And 2 or 3 minutes later, he came back and he said, I could use some information on that because I have one of those tattooed on my chest. So really, I would never have guessed. Yeah, a rosary. I couldn't see it because he had his shirt on, but he was quite convinced that's exactly what he had tattooed on his chest.
And he didn't know what it was.
Done. He didn't know what it was. And so that was the amazing thing is, how the Lord works. another time I was on a bus, and there was a woman next to me who was on the phone with her doctor and was receiving bad news. So I asked her when she hung up if she would like a miraculous medal. And so I explained to her what it was, and she was really thrilled. And then the guy behind me pipes up to the lady and says, "Hey, what is that?" And so she explains it, and he said, "Can I have it?"
Oh my gosh.
Right. And so I turned and I said, "Do you want your own?" Don't steal hers.
Did she give him hers?
She was about to give hers away. And so then we had this great conversation, right there on the bus, and the three of us. And neither of them was Catholic, but they were open. And that's the thing. People love to be loved, right? And they love to be heard, and they love to receive a gift. And if you are offering those, people are really receptive. And especially if you're just normal, or as normal as you can be for whoever you are, and act yourself, no one's normal. I say it because no one isn't totally normal.
Right.
But if you just act yourself, people will love you for that, right? And they'll respond to you. So, yeah. So there's lots of funny things that happen, which give me a lot of joy, when I think about it.
I think just one of the things you said really struck me was the beautiful part about this apostolate. There's only one story, right? There's only one proclamation of the gospel. And unless we're proclaiming Jesus Christ, and the fullness of his, life, death, and resurrection, and our possibility and what our invitation to live in relationship with now and for him forever in heaven, like that's what we're proclaiming. We're out there in the streets, but when it becomes our story, it might just take a little bit different nuance. Not that the message itself is different, but the way we proclaim it might have a little personal touch, because we ourselves are in a living relationship with Christ. And so when we're speaking from a living relationship, it becomes personal. And that's the way that we as evangelists and team leaders, when we're out there on the street, are able, that's where the authenticity will come through.
Right.
Is I'm not just telling you, and a lot of times when you see big street corners, they're preaching at you, and it doesn't come across as this authentic, loving way to engage people. It comes across as a very cold-hearted. I don't know. Does that kind of make sense? Like the opportunity to proclaim the gospel in your own way is flowing from that living relationship, and it just we're all broken. And if we have any healing in us or any strength, it's from the Lord. And I think when we realize that, that's when we want to share what the Lord has done for us with others. And so you're coming from that place of, I am broken. I've been broken, but he's healing me. He has healed me. And I want to share what he can do for you, And that's true with being a team leader too. And I can say that, being vulnerable and broken myself, that when I was in Maryland, it was a long process, a number of years to get that team going, but you start out small. And I'm in Ohio now, and I'm at that small state again. And I find it hard, even though I teach others how to lead and build teams, I find it hard too, I have to be patient and I have to bring my brokenness to the Lord and my impatience to the Lord, and say, encourage me, Lord. I'm at that small stage again, help me to do the things that I'm teaching others to do, And so I think we just have to approach our whole mission work, from evangelist to team leader to whatever role you have is, okay, this is me in my poverty, but the Lord's going to work through me if I just let him.
Patience, like you said, patience.
Patience.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes patience. It does. It really does. And it's so worth it. It's so worth it.
Joanne, one of the things that we just wanted to go back to is you were talking about all these great things of these stories that are coming from the street, of just that encouragement for those who are just starting, of starting a full and lasting team. What would you say that they can do now in order to do that?
Instead of just a team of two, getting a little bit, keeping it growing and energized.
I think the very first thing to do is go to a priest and ask him to have a mass offered for the growth of your team. Very simple, most powerful thing you can do. And then secondly, to actually pick out one person and share what you're doing with just one person and ask them to join your team as a prayer person or just to join you on one outing. And I say one because it always starts with one. And once you have that one person, then the two of you are going to share that joy with each other and go forward in growth together.
That's great advice. So you don't worry about getting 10 people. Start with one.
No.
Okay.
Right. I think it's very personal. That with all the experience I had getting new team members in Maryland, when I look back, I think there were about 50 or 60 team members on our team when I left. And the team's still great. It's still going and it's still doing well. But when I look back, it's not from the bulletin announcements that I got the people who stayed. It was the one-on-one conversations. It was going to friends, going to someone that I saw was an intentional disciple and sharing that with them. It was the one-on-one conversations that led to lasting team members that were really involved. So I definitely think that's the way to go.
That's really helpful.
That's great. Yeah, Joanne, thank you so much for being on the podcast with us today.
Wonderful that we were able to pull it off, right?
I didn't to say, Beth, was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think it was great. Joanne, it's always so fun to talk with you and your experience. I just
Thank you.
Like, oh my gosh, that's good, such good work. And your love of the Lord it's just so obvious that it's the Lord working in and through you. And that's how you're successful in this, by yielding to the Lord. And you've done that. So thank you.
Absolutely. And sometimes that you don't feel successful, just to put it in there. The Lord's still using you.
Yeah, right.
So be patient. Be patient. But thank you very much. It's a great fun to be able to have this conversation with you both.
Thanks again for everybody for listening. This is Saint Paul Street Evangelization, where we're training, equipping, and mobilizing Catholics for the extraordinary work of evangelization in order to save souls. See you next time.
God bless you.
God bless.